Okay, we are live. I am very happy to be here to discuss some very important um, elements of our society and how we can deal with the affordability of our society and what we can do. And I'm here with two very strong unionists and organizers. I am here with Ceresta Smith, who is also the administrator for the United Opt Out National Save Our Schools Steering Committee, as well as a retired educator. Welcome, Ceresta Smith.
Well, thank you.
And I'm also here with Manny Hartman, another organizer, CWA organizer, and also an activist in the community at all levels, because even in the neighborhood, he does a lot of activism in the local neighborhood. So, welcome, Manny Hartman.
Thank you, Martha. Glad to be here and with you and Ceresta.
So, one of the things that we were talking to previously to coming live is that in every country, not just in the United States, but let's focus on the United States and locally where we are, Miami, Florida. We have a lot of issues with affordability that affect us in a lot of aspects of our life. For example, there's food insecurity, there's a housing crisis, it's unaffordable, it's never been so expensive to afford housing. There's also issues with insurance benefits. They're very limiting in many aspects. If you have insurance through your employer, if you have it, many times they are limiting in the services that they provide. And gasoline. So everything is very expensive in terms of the systems that you need to have in place to survive. So we're here addressing it and perhaps looking at it in the perspective of how can unions impact these struggles that our communities are having and how can they make it better. So if you want to go ahead and share an aspect of your work and how you address these issues, what do you think is something that is important to address? Go ahead. Why don't we start with Ceresta?
Okay. I am a retired educator with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I currently receive a pension and Social Security. Um, these things I do have. Unfortunately, the threat to those that are coming after me to continue to have Social Security and pension payments are it's up in the air and it's questionable. Even though I'm no longer working for Miami-Dade County Public Schools, I am a retired member of United Teachers of Dade as well as FEA, NEA, and AFT affiliates. And I think it's important as people that are part of organized labor that we champion for causes to make life affordable, not only for those that are currently employed and come under the wing of a union, but for those that are unemployed or for those that are employed but don't come under the wing of organized labor. And I think one of the strongest ways we can do this is um, support those candidates that believe in making sure that it's not just tax cuts to the wealthy, making sure that we have get behind elected officials and stay on them to make things affordable. I know here in Miami-Dade County, housing became a major issue. And when it came to housing, our governor, our illustrious governor DeSantis, signed a bill in 2019 that prohibited rent control. And in doing so, of course, all of a sudden, within the last 2 years, I know plenty of people, many of them on fixed incomes, that have had anywhere from $500 to $2,000 increases in their rent. Mayor Cava has tried to find ways to mitigate the impact of this um, while not breaking Florida law. And I think it's up to organized labor to support our local officials in doing what they can. There is a terrible homeless situation that's going not only in Miami-Dade County and Broward and the nearby counties, but all over this country. So I think it's important for organized labor too make sure that they're responsive to the needs of the community, get out there and fight for viable candidates that can impact legislative policy. Because right now we're really struggling in Florida with policies that really look out for people. Um, the governor supposedly has signed a bill that is to facilitate breaks and perks to those builders that come into the community um, regarding housing. They're supposedly slotted to build affordable housing as a part of whatever contracts they get. Well, what are you going to do right now? That's the important thing. What are you going to do right now? That's sort of in the future. But you have all these people that are still struggling right now. So our hands are tied to a certain extent, but we can certainly try and do what we can to as members of organized labor to try and facilitate and help as best we can. All
Yes. So I understand it's important, and I've always said that it is important that we not only focus on union members in order to improve their lives, but to understand that they are extended family, and that our neighbors may not be afforded the opportunity of being a member of a union and may not have that voice. So, Manny, would you like to share your opinion?
Yeah, and thank you, Martha. Thank you, Ceresta. So just to add more what Ceresta said, one of the things that got me thinking about the work here that we all do day to day in a union is we want to not just continue to build what we have, but to improve what we have and to make sure that others that come behind us, that we reach back and we pull them up and we lift them up. And one of the ways, not just to have them to get involved in a union, but also to get them organized and get them in a collective bargaining agreement and have them understand that just because you have a contract, that's not the end all. It's not the cure. It's just the beginning. Because if you don't think employers, just because you have a collective bargaining agreement, that employers are not going to try to interpret the contract their way, then I don't think you're in a contract.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no doubt about it. But the other thing is to understand and to bring people up so that they too can enjoy the benefits of having a collective written bargaining agreement that they can look forward to their raises, they can look forward to their benefits, to their pension, uh, to their 401k contributions, affordable health care, paid time leave off, vacation, FMLA, that it's all there. All those things are important, and it's spelled out. But I also look and see that, like I said, a contract does not end just because you have a contract. You need to always be vigilant and be aware and take care of that contract like if it's gold, and have folks understand that folks like Ceresta, even though she belonged to another union, she's still a union member, in my opinion. And because of her sacrifices and the work that she did, um, I was able to benefit from that. And I think that's how we need to view things, because we need to understand the sacrifices made before. We have to know our history. And
Exactly.
yeah,
So
we
important.
have to know our history for better or for worse so that we can improve on it, whether it's good or bad.
I get that. And now that you've said better or worse, let's get down to some nitty gritty. Are you ready?
So,
All right. So, we have people who are not union members, and some of them say it's for the money, which I discount totally because you cannot afford not to be a union member. But some of them say, well, they don't really do anything for me. Now, you mentioned something about the contract. So basically, my opinion is, well, even if your union is maybe, not as effective in terms of doing the work that they need to be doing by guiding you and supporting you and empowering you, at least they did provide a contract to you. So, what do you think about people who may say, well, all right, we have a contract. I recognize that that's good, but our union doesn't step up and go into the fight. They kind of left, you know, what do you think about that?
Let me piggyback on something that Manny mentioned. He said one word, one key word, history. A lot of, I think, I'm not going to say just the younger employees of today, but a lot of people don't understand the history of organized labor and how there never would have been a middle class.
Oh, I hit the wrong button. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay.
I hit the wrong button.
That we never would have had a middle class in America if we didn't have organized labor. um, they weren't perfect, and as Manny said, for good or for, they weren't always perfect. At one point they excluded people of color, but as they grew and developed, they began to get beyond that embrace, and we have to really show them that this is the only way you're going to maintain a middle class, is if you have organized labor. When we look at the workers from Starbucks, when we look at the workers from Amazon, I think it's our responsibility to support them when they do try and farm locals in their areas, and it's our we should definitely be impressing upon those, like in these right to work states where you don't, or you're not forced to join a union. We definitely need to point out to people that that contract is still oh so important.
So,
If you decide to let what has happened recently, and they have filed lawsuit against it, FEA, and the state has filed, and a local has filed a lawsuit against the recent bill that he's getting ready to well, that he did
well,
sign, and
he
it
has
goes into,
signed it. He has
yeah,
signed it. But for the benefit of
yeah,
people who are not in Florida, the bill that Ceresta is referring to is a bill that DeSantis, I don't remember, 477 or something, which basically changed a lot of the way that unions are able to be the bargaining agent. You have to meet a 60% membership, or else you are decertified, and you have to maintain that 60% membership. You have to go through a certain audit every year, and you also can no longer pay for your union dues through deductions,
automatic.
automatic deductions.
Yeah, that's SB 256. And he has signed it. It will go into effect, I think, July 1st.
Yeah.
However, they did file a suit against it, um, as violation, drug violation. So we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. But what I think a lot of the union members that are reticent, non-union members that are reticent about joining the local in Miami-Dade, as well as the others across the state, they don't realize that they will have no contract. And that contract is also important when it's talking about working conditions that are just there, even though they may not be happy with the collective bargaining that has gone on either annually or every 2 years. They still have that contract that will disappear. It will poof. It'll be non existence. And at that point, this particular board here in Miami-Dade County, and I know others as well, the membership of the board now is majority DeSantis plants. Okay. So when we're talking about, do they care anything about your contractual rights?
No, they
And do
don't.
they care anything? The other thing that's in jeopardy is, even though the referendum was passed, every year that gets collective bargain as to how it will be dispersed among the various different groups. Well, do you want them deciding how much money you're going to get out of that referendum money? Do you want to leave that up to them? Right now, they have to go along with the whatever UTD bargains for. But if they lose that contract, that's all gone. So I
Right.
think it's important for us to be very, very vocal. I was asked by some of the union stewards that are currently employed what can be done. And I composed a letter. I said, share this with your membership. Let them see it. Let them know what's going on. It spells out exactly what you lose
I
if you
read that
allow.
letter.
Yeah.
But I need to clarify because we have people watching that are from other states and are not maybe aware. We're talking about legislation that affects all of the unions that are for public service employees, with the exception, and only in Florida, with the
Mhm.
exception of the police, fire rescue, and corrections officers.
The
So
male dominated populated forces. Let's
thank
just
you
forget
very
the
much.
sexism that's involved here.
Thank you very much. So, in addition to that, I also wanted to point out, and I don't want to cut you off. You are a source of so much information. I want to thank you for being here. But we want to make sure everybody understands perhaps a little bit of, like you both said, is important history. So, one of the largest union in Florida, the teachers union, is United Teachers of Dade, and our president Carla Hernandez Matz ran as the governor lieutenant for the opposition of DeSantis. So many people believe that that is the reason why we were attacked and targeted. I think that it was going to come down the pipe anyway. Maybe this made it come down a little faster. Okay. But the reason I am clarifying what unions are affected and which unions are not affected, because I have to tell you the truth. Manny just mentioned that all unions should work together.
Yeah.
We are all brothers and sisters, whether you put in pipes or wires or instruction. If you're a union member, you're supposed to be my brother and I'm supposed to be your sister. And I'm very disappointed. I've got to put it out there. I'm very disappointed in the lack of action and the lack of communication and disdain to this bill that has not been heard from the union members that were exempted, like our police and fire and corrections officers. They should have been standing up right there next to
With
us,
this.
holding our hands and saying, we're with our brothers and sisters that are going to be negatively impacted. They're frontliners as well as we are. They suffer attacks at the school sites. If you're a teacher, if you're, I mean, I didn't hear a thing. Did you hear
No.
something? I heard crickets.
I called. I called the various different locals across the state and I asked them to stand in solidarity. And most times, did I get to speak to anybody that had any power or decision making capability? No. I was so, well, we'll let them know and they'll get back to you. Did any of them get back to me? No, they did not. But I took time out and I said and called all of them and said, this is unfair that they're attacking mostly labor bodies that are highly populated with females. The sexism is there. It's just
Manny,
Manny.
what do you think about that? Because I know that you're not in a highly populated, female industry, but what would you say about that?
So yeah, that's a very good point, and all very valid and important points mentioned by both of you. Um, I just think one thing, and it is the backbone of this country, besides the middle class that Ceresta had referred to, and which is very true. But education, teachers are the backbone of our country. Bottom line, they always have, and they always will be, because growing up, you're going to get educated, you're going to go to school, and you're going to get educated by a person that is going to teach you how to learn. That's really the essence. And whether it be at a lower level or mid level or higher ed, teachers are the backbone of our country, bar none. That's a given. So I think that um, what right now we're in the midst of a campaign that is ongoing throughout the country with call center workers. And within the campaign, the majority, and this has been very eye opening to me personally, but in this campaign, the majority of the workers that work, um, more than half go to a location now post COVID and they go to work. The less than half work from home, but they are female and predominantly minority. And they're all over the country, in different states. And for them, explaining to them and them knowing the importance of what they refer to as the great equalizer, a bargaining agreement, a contract, it's going to pay them no matter what. It doesn't matter what their um, whether they're male, female, or other. Um, so it is important. It doesn't matter the age either. So this is like the great equalizer, and now we're seeing more and more women enter the workforce, just by necessity, because today day and age it's rare where in a married couple that that one can stay home. So yeah, so this is like very very important. And by the way, let me add, just because you have a union contract, what Martha referred to, like what's the union doing for you? No, they see, they have the misconception that just because you have a contract, everything is fine and what's the union doing for me? And then they sit back and they criticize the union when in their eyes, in their vision, the union doesn't do anything. Well, guess who's the union? The union is you. The union is not somebody sitting in an office that runs for election every 3 to 4 years. The union is you, and it starts with you.
So let me ask you a question, because if we are the union, right, we're bringing it back to the foot soldier, right? So is it that we have forgotten what unionism is, the philosophy and the concept of unionism? Has that been watered down? Because from my recollection, if a union would have been attacked, the other unions would have stood up. So I'm gonna bring it back, and I'm gonna make some enemies. And I love the police, and I love corrections officers, and I love the firefighters. But I'm gonna bring it right back, and I'm gonna call their attention and call it out. If your union and you see that unions are being abused and that somehow you're not um, being affected, you need to speak up for your union brothers and sisters, and they have not. So, who has failed in teaching union members what unionism truly is? Because obviously somebody has.
I think some of
Because
it has to.
I asked a police officer, I said, what do you think about what's going on with the teachers and how they're going to be losing these union rights? And he said, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, your wife is a teacher. Don't you know about what's going on? No, no clue. So that means that their union hasn't even brought the subject up to the members to let them know this is happening in the community, and it is important to us as union members and brethren of other unions.
I think it's not only the unions that are beneficiaries of the agenda to disenfranchise some unions and keep the other ones' backs padded. Um, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that once Citizens United and once they were enabled corporations to be considered human entities that have a political voice and can buy off and pay out and do whatever they want to
Mhm.
buy off people. I think that's been one of the major problems. That needs to be trashed. For many things to change, that needs to be trashed. And then our media, because it's corporate media now, you don't get enough, I think, coverage on what has happened historically to disenfranchise collective bargaining. We've had organized labor has had a tremendous victory in Michigan. This woman got rid of right to work out of Michigan. And who knows this? How many people, how much media do you see coverage on that? That's historic. She actually restored collective bargaining in Michigan, and it's all in all its glory. Um, I think as more and more younger folks are getting disenfranchised by poor benefits, poor salary, et cetera, that's why we see this uprise where the service industry, because yes, America has gone towards a service industry um, job market because much of our industry was outsourced. I think they're starting to wake up and realize the only way they're going to get things rolling and on the ball is if they do stand up and organize and fight. They've been suffering the consequences of this disempowering of unions.
So I think you're right because, for example, talking about Starbucks, mainly their employees are young, right?
Mhm.
So I think that it's true that they did go ahead and start organizing because they saw, we can't
Mhm.
afford rent, we can't afford living unless we have a better conditions at work. But when you mentioned how a corporation can be considered a living being, I'm going to come right back. And I've got my gloves on, my fighting gloves. And I'm going to come right back and say, have our unions become corporations? Philosophically, because we don't have the information that we need to have. We should have the lady from Michigan educating all of the other unions here and teaching them what they did to succeed so we can be successful. And we should have had a bigger fight against this new anti union busting legislation that we're suffering right now. And we should have had our union brothers and sisters, the policemen, firefighters, and corrections officers, stand up loud and proud and say, this is not right. But we didn't have that.
Mhm.
And not only we didn't have that, but the union leaders for those unions did not even inform the members. This is happening to these other unions.
Mhm.
They didn't even tell them. They didn't even say, do you want to support them? Do you want to make calls for them? Do you want to help them? Nothing. And
Nothing.
that's why I'm saying that it appears to me that we're forgetting what a union is supposed to behave like. Go ahead. I know you guys are like, where do I go from here? What can I say? Well, I really hope that we all speak fearlessly
Well, you
because
made a point, Marta, when you said when you mentioned our unions becoming corporate entities too, that kind of forget where they started and what they grew into initially and what they've done. I think there is some of that is happening. Um, I don't know if the don't know, Manny. What would
Yeah.
you say?
Well, no, I mean, I definitely agree, and like to take it even a step further, um, because there's going to come a point, if it ever gets to it, where um, they're going to be the last union members in the state of Florida, right? Police, fire, and corrections. They're going to be the last ones. And last time I checked, um, you know, whenever they have an issue and they have a problem, who are they going to go to for support?
Mhm,
It's
Mhm,
inevitable they're going to have an issue of some at
mhm.
some point,
mhm.
um, and they're going to need public support. They're going to need help, and at that point, it's going to be difficult for them to go to us and then not hear the coming back to them and said, "Well, where were you when we needed you?"
Exactly. I'm wondering, one of the other things that has come through this legislative session in Florida is our governor is now tampering with our pension fund by getting rid of all investments in companies that are quote unquote woke or support the causes of equity and social justice. Um, the money is already in crisis. The decisions that have been made already have put the pension fund in jeopardy. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they draw from that same pension fund. So I'm
That's
wondering if
right.
the money starts getting really funny, where they'll be at this point.
Suddenly they'll start speaking.
Hmm.
But you know what? That reminds me of that poem. Oh my gosh, the one that says they came after the
They came
Jews and
for
I
it.
didn't
Yeah.
say anything because I wasn't Jewish, right?
Hmm.
And also the concept of, you know, if your neighbor's house is on fire and you don't really worry about it because it's his house, not yours, eventually your house is going to catch on fire. So it's sad to think that when they're affected either by the pension, you know, because of what you
Hmm.
just mentioned, or because eventually they're going to get knocked out too. You know, it's not.
Hmm.
It is what it is. Right now, they're favored, but there's a trend, and it's a pretty evident one.
And it's
And
scary.
they're going to get knocked out as well. So I think that there is strength when you divide people into groups. That when you divide them, you're conquering them. And I think that they have the unions have all of them. And I'm going to put blame on every single union, even us, even
Hmm.
our union, because they haven't called them out. I think that our union leaders, and maybe it did happen and we don't know, maybe, but our union leaders, let's say I was president, I would have called all of the presidents of the different police
Hmm.
departments and I would have said, "What is up with you? You need to speak up and you need to speak loud." I would have called every single president and told them, "I am calling out on you. Speak up because I'm going to make it public." And I would have made it
Well,
public.
full
I would have made a
disclosure,
plea, a public plea on
full
social media.
disclosure, Marta, I asked Andy, not Andy, I asked the president of FEA, Andrew,
Yes.
if they had done that. And he said yes, they had reached out to them.
Yeah.
And did they give them any support? No.
No,
So
but they
so
should have done it
they
publicly. Shame them.
yeah,
Shame
they
them
should have
publicly.
shamed them. He didn't say,
Absolutely.
he personally told me that they had reached out and they didn't get any real support. But you're right. They should have put it on blast.
We
But
need
then
to play
again,
hardball because
yeah.
guess what? They are playing hardball against us. So what are we going to be with kit gloves? I mean,
Right.
have you guys seen the political machinery and the
Hmm.
way they manipulate the propaganda to squash us?
Hmm.
So why are we being diplomatic?
Exactly.
I would have been on Twitter, Facebook, all over the place saying, "Police brethren, here we are. Your sisters and your brothers speak
Hmm.
on our behalf."
I agree.
Like I said, I did I sat and called and called and called and called. And well, we'll see. We'll get back to you. I'll give him the message. I'll do this. I'll do that. And that's when I reached out to Andrew Spar. I said, I've been calling. Has FEA, has anybody done anything to approach these unions that are being exempted from this madness? And he said, yes, they have. And I
Not
didn't
even,
see where they stood up in
no,
solidarity.
they did not. They did not even go and speak on our behalf.
Hmm.
They did not. They did not make one public disclosure or statement on our
Hmm.
behalf.
Like
They
I said,
stayed
when the money
silent.
gets funny, maybe they'll start.
When
We'll
the
see.
money gets funny, I like that.
Because I don't
The
know how
money
this.
gets funny.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But still, that's why I think that we're having a crisis with regards to what unionism is. I think that until we get that straight, we're not going to get anything else straight.
Hmm.
Unionism is stand together no matter what. You lock arms and you stay strong standing no
Hmm.
matter what. And that is not happening. And when that doesn't happen, we no longer have a union. We have something else that I don't even know what it is, but it's not a union.
And what's scary now is you have a curriculum that's been maligned, that many history teachers are not even comfortable and going into a discussion of organized labor and its history, because it does involve sexism, it does involve racism, it does involve a lot of exploitation with child labor. And
Child
as
labor.
you can see, this is where I'm really aghast. Where I was born and raised, the state of Iowa, they're now changing all their child labor laws, along with a lot of the other states where they're now allowing young people to work. It used to what be part-time 4 hours a day, and I think you had to be 16. Well, now you can be 14 and work 16 hours a day. If you're underage and unable to buy liquor yourself, now you can serve liquor in establishments. These are the things they're doing with child labor. And one of the biggest things that organized labor did was protected
Right.
children against exploitation. All that's being thrown out the window. And I don't know why the media is not putting that out there a little bit more on blast as well, because Iowa's not the only state that has done this.
I hadn't heard about this until you said it to me.
Oh
I
yeah,
hate to say that,
it's
but
ridiculous. It's ridiculous because of course the thought is we do not want these immigrants doing these jobs, so now we're going to get the kids to do them.
that's that's terrible. That is terrible.
Oh, the whole thing is sick, and
Okay, I need to go and turn off my automatic vacuum cleaner that just started and is making a bunch of racket and noise. But in the meantime, I want you to go ahead and speak on how we can re educate. If we can't use our public school system to educate about what real unionism is, how can we approach that issue?
Ceresta, can I take this?
go ahead, Manny.
Okay. I'll be quick, I promise, or at least I'll
Oh
try.
no, that's fine.
So it's not only misinformation that's out there. So what they're telling, what you're hearing from the media and from the corporate media is not only misinformation, so they're lying to you, but even more so, I echo what Martha said. I may have heard it in passing, but why isn't this such a gargantuan issue about kids? I thought it was a joke,
No,
but it's not a joke.
not
Where
a
you have kids and in other countries, I believe it may have been in Brazil or in Portugal somewhere, where they actually got hurt on the job. So how in God's name, how is that being permitted or even thought of? So that's one. Number two, also, and I'm not giving anybody a pass, but things today, we are in crazy times. We barely have any time for anything, right? Where you get up, you go, you've got to run in the morning, kids off to school, you've got to get to work. So I understand that people say, look, I support, I'll back you up 110%, but honestly, Martha, I just don't have the time. Ceresta, I wish I could attend the committee meeting tonight, but I can't. Well, so we have this platform coupled with other social media platforms that are out there. So, Martha, to your point, where how do we get the word out more? I think that we can do it this way, where we're not being shut down. And I just think it's going to take one block at a time, going into your neighborhoods and sharing information and getting information out there. There's no shortcuts to that. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I agree. Basically, you have to. It's the door to door. It's coalescing with other organizations besides organized labor. Those organizations that are just social justice organizations. Those organizations that are environmental justice organization.
exactly.
I think it's basically most of us are on the same page. We want to see the same things happen. I was just I do work part time still. I'm working with Proximity Learning, which is a private company that the only reason that in my heart I could do this is because it's a private company that sends or zooms teachers into public schools that have no teachers. Their teaching staffs are very short at this point. they're short staffed. So we go in and we teach over virtually to kids that are sitting in school buildings with staffs that, a better a Zoom teacher than no teacher at all is what it boils down to. But I think it goes to that basic thing where you have to just get with the various different groups, and you have to, like Manny said, you got to knock on doors, you've got to hold those forums, you've got to hold these virtual um,
Hmm.
virtual talks,
Hmm.
um, such as this. People really have to understand that we're in a crisis.
Hmm.
We're in a crisis. I was in Ethiopia in October, August through October to October, and while I was there, I happened to be talking to a Ferris driver, and a Ferris driver is akin to our Uber driver. Okay, and he said that the Coptic priests of Ethiopia have all focused on the United States and the fact that it's falling. And he just shared this with me out of the blue, where he began to talk about how it's they see us coming to a bad end, so to
Yes.
speak. And when you look around and you see what's going on
Yes.
politically in this country, when you see people that are really arming themselves for civil wars and whatnot, you
Yes.
start to wonder. Um, but I do think if any of this gets mitigated, it's going to be mitigated because of organized labor coalescing with social justice groups to make things happen or move in another direction.
Yes. Yes, and it's funny that you should mention that because I was just listening to the news where there was some discussion where countries were thinking of a backup plan to the dollar because now the dollar is the universal
Right.
money, right? So they were actually coming up with a backup plan. Now, when countries get together to
Hmm.
consider what other denomination they could use, that something is behind that. And we may not be getting the news readily available, but something is behind that. That countries don't get together to discuss what denomination they can use, if they can't use the dollar anymore, right?
Yeah.
I
Well,
think they have other things to concern themselves with, unless this is important, and I think it is. And I do think that we are in a crisis. I
mm,
do think that there are a lot of things that we're not being told because knowledge is power. So if you withhold knowledge, then you're withholding power. I
mhm.
think that it really is important that we, even though we are busy, Manny, even though we do have a lot of things to do, we need to recommit a certain amount of time to civic responsibility and civic duty, because I think that's part of the problem that we have socially, that
Mm,
we're very concerned and we are involved in attaining goods because we fall into the trap of watching the TV and the movies, and let's attain and let's get and let's get, but
mm,
there's very little let's give and let's sacrifice, because that's not what's popular. And I think that is part of what has gotten us to where we are now, where we do not recognize exactly what unionism is, because unionism is all about sacrifice and your duty. Unionism is not, oh, I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. No, it is, I am going to help people get what they deserve. And we are people, so we are helping each other. So I really do think that we need to take the bull by the horn. We need to redirect the focus that we are headed in. We need to be
exactly.
stronger with our leaders and our political leaders as well as our union leaders. And we need to tell them, this is what we want.
We have,
You
and the scary situation is though, and you know this here, Marta, in South and Florida, that so many people have been told mistruths about organized labor. Oh, it's communistic,
Yeah.
communistic,
Yeah.
communistic, socialistic. You know, that whole mischaracterization of organized labor. I think that has to be. That narrative has to be changed. People have to learn the value of organized labor and quit the hype that it's communism and it's
Mhm.
socialism, and unfortunately you have people that buy into that false narrative. And educating people is also important. You have some people that want to start hosting um, community education systems in some of the local churches and venues, which at this point I'm thinking this is a good idea because
Yes,
people are badly miseducated.
yes.
And if you have our young people who cannot learn, just here recently, um, came on the newswire that the state of Florida threw out tons and tons and tons of possible books for the teaching of sociology and history, and they opted to have books that actually pointed out all the negatives to other economic systems and nothing negative about capitalism.
Yep. What is the name of this man? Luther Campbell. Okay, I
Yes,
think
Uncle Luke.
right. I think he's the one who said it, and I said, "Oh my gosh, he's right." I don't know if he was being sarcastic or trying to make the best of things, but he is right. He said, "Okay, it's good that they took out these things from the public schools because guess what? Now, all of this education, we're going to bring it back home and we're going to teach our kids at home what they need to be taught. We're going to take that responsibility now and we're going to do it and we're going to do it much better." I love that attitude. And I think it has something
Mhm,
to do with what you're saying, where you're saying, okay, now let's open our community organizations and
mhm,
let's deliver instruction there of concepts that are not being taught other places. And another thing is that I think we need to redefine what is good and what is bad. This good and bad is not really the
mhm.
truth, because what do you think social security is? I mean, that's a very leftist concept. I mean, what do you
Yes,
think
it is.
Medicare is? I mean, that's totally leftist. So there's nothing wrong with social responsibility and equity.
Mhm. And what's expedient and good for the community. I mean, we have to have decent roads. We have to have decent services, garbage pickup, et cetera, et cetera. We these things we have to have utilities. I mean, it just gets frustrating when you're thinking of the false
Yeah,
narratives. But it is, I think, up to the community now, and I think
it is
organized labor can take
a
part in
leading
hosting
role in
some of these
organizing,
community events. Yeah.
because it's like what Manny said. This doesn't only affect the person, or was it you, the person who is working and has a union.
Mm,
This affects everybody in the community, because if you're in a family of five, all right, and you happen to be the only one who's benefiting from having a union, the rest of your family is not. So, it has to be a community union type of concept. You have to be able to extend the power of dictating your life opportunities to everybody.
Yeah. And furthermore, Martha and Ceresta, I know but when you and in the Midwest and the Northeast, it is evident when you have more workers that belong to a union, there's
yes.
only so many workers available. So there are private employers, even small mom and pop operations.
Hmm.
They need to employ. They need employment, right? They need workers.
Hmm.
So, do you think a person, we're just giving you an example, a person that is a janitor at a school that is making what, $20 an hour, let's say $20 an hour, do you
That's
think they're
on
going
the
to
high
leave that?
side.
Yeah, yeah, it's on the high
Yes,
side, but
he
just
got a
but
raise.
in the Northeast or in the Midwest, that's close to what they make. But if they leave, uh, if how are they going to get workers at these other jobs?
Yeah,
They have to pay them the same because
yeah.
if look, bottom line, people aren't going to leave unless they're being paid well.
Hmm.
So that is another thing. And then you have the income inequality today in our country. Starbucks and Amazon. and whatnot that lay the blame on the workers that are making, my goodness, $15 an hour. They lay the blame
Mhm.
on them and on unions that want to represent them when you have these highfalutin corporate people in their company making, you know how much they make.
Oh, yeah. It's
It's
ridiculous.
crazy. So again, misinformation, they redirect, and if it was a question of money, then why do companies like Apple, like Amazon, and like Starbucks spend so much money on anti-union attorneys and companies to fight
Exactly.
organized labor? It's very simple.
Exactly.
It's not a question about money. It's power.
It's power.
That
Mhm.
relinquishing of power,
That's it.
having their workers having power, that is
Absolutely.
exactly what they fight
Yeah.
day in and day out.
Right, because they don't want the workers to make any kind of decisions. They want you to either you like it or you walk out that door. And that's, I always come back. I say, I understand salary is important. I get that, but I'm going to go even a step beyond and say, when I go to work, you can pay me $1 million, and if you're abusing me, I will not be there anymore. I will leave. So in our negotiations as a union member, we want to negotiate job safety. We want to negotiate environment and culture as well, because we don't want to be in an environment where we are abused or disrespected. And we also want to negotiate benefits. And people want to forget all of those other things and just focus on money. Yes, money is important, but guess what? If I have great insurance as a benefit, I may not need that much money because you're giving me great insurance as a benefit.
Mhm.
So you have to take into consideration again that there's more to this picture. This is a bigger picture than just unions fight for better salaries. Yes, they
Mhm.
do. But in addition to that, they fight for working conditions. They
And
fight
that's so
for
important.
they fight for benefits, which may include education benefits as well, so that you can improve. That they fight for fair working conditions so that you're not fired just because they want to hire somebody's cousin or niece or girlfriend.
Mhm.
You know, these are the things that people need to recognize, because when people say, "Oh, I don't want to join my union because it costs too much money and this and that and the other," go, well, try not having a union. Try going to work tomorrow morning and try your boss calling you to the office saying, "Guess what? Today's your last day. You got to leave." Why? I don't have to tell you. That's it.
Well, that's unfortunately that's going on in the teaching profession right now. The way they've managed to outmaneuver organized labor and make it so a teacher of what 1 to 3 years can be let go for any reason without any cause. They can just let them go.
Yeah, the newer
Um,
teachers,
yeah, the newer
yeah.
teachers, they're starting to work without some of these protections.
Right,
Um, and
right.
of course, the governor has really destroyed tenure for our college professors at this point. They tenure is starting to be a thing of the past from there with these recent bills that have been passed. And people have to fight this because nobody wants to go back to a situation where you're working like a indentured servant, and that's what it's boiling down to.
Big
Um,
time, especially because they want to give teachers housing. It's like, oh my gosh, this
yeah,
is so surreal. And you
yeah,
would say, what? Why are you upset about getting housing? Hello, if your job is dependent, if your home is dependent on your job, now that's it. Now they
that's it.
say, okay, here you can live in this little house. We'll pay your rent. You don't have to pay much, just maybe a couple $100. Now they can abuse you at work,
And,
because if
and
you quit work, you lose your house. No,
mhm,
don't give me housing through my work. Just give me
no,
a decent salary and some respect. I'll be fine.
there you go. I agree.
All right.
I,
So we're basically down to the last 6 minutes, and I want to give you guys an opportunity. I know that our discussion kind of maybe went all over the place, but in a way, I think it's important that it does go all over the place, because people's ability to live in a fruitful manner is affected by so many different things, not just your union, your work, your mental health, your ability to access mental health care, physical health care, and even happiness and joy to be able to go to a park. So, all of these things affect the quality of our lives. But in the last few minutes that we have, I would like for you to share something that you feel is really important for people to take with them as a summary or a conclusion of what will improve all of our lives if we perhaps focus on that one thing. Who would like to take it first?
Manny, you want to take it?
Sure.
Hmm.
Very simple. And thank you, Ceresta, and thank you, Martha, for giving us this platform to begin the conversation. Um, Number one, be very thankful for what you have, because if you don't, um, you can never strive for betterment. And we all want betterment, whether it be for ourselves personally or our family or our neighbors. We always want betterment. So that's number one. Number two, take the time to listen and to, even if it's just half an hour to an hour a day, if we do have that, would be to stop and listen and educate yourself on an issue and look to the different media platforms that there are out there, because there's a lot where you need to get educated and learn. And when I talk about not just looking at the social media and whatnot, go to where people work and look and get educated and learn about what they are having to go through. It will really enlighten you, and it will open up your eyes immensely. And just keep wanting to learn and keep wanting to get educated,
I
because
love
it's the
that.
only way that we're going
Hmm.
to have betterment throughout our society.
I love that. Appreciation and education. I love that. Thank you so much. How about Ceresta? Let's see how I can get Ceresta.
Okay. I think that is very important, Manny. You can't stress that anymore. But the other third thing is we've got to get out there and vote for those candidates that are going to support organized labor causes, support housing that is affordable, support making sure that people can have proper health care. If you're dealing with a legislative body like we look at in Florida that has a mandate, because darn near everybody in it is on the same page with a conservative ideology and a agenda that's pushing in a direction that is actually disenfranchising folks. It's important to join whatever organizations you can. It's important to foster people getting out there to the polls to vote. I know we've got obstacles like gerrymandering and redrawn boundaries and districts, but if the people's voice is heard, it can overshadow all of that. So, to piggyback on what Manny said, let's get out there and get the vote going on. Gen Z, they're saying that's the young, those that are beneath us in age that are going to save this situation, because they're the ones that have actually suffered the most if you really think about it. They've worked hard, they've gone to school, they're not getting the salaries that they deserve. Talk to them, communicate across the demographics, across age groups, etc.
Mhm.
But coalesce and let's get together and start voting in elected officials that are going to do what the people need.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And on my end over here, I want to thank you both for being here. I know both of you are tireless activists in the community and you take up a lot of causes. You go across the board to make sure that all of the dots are connected because there is a connection between all of the issues. So I want to thank you not only for being here, but also for doing what you do every day and give of yourself so much to do it. And my little suggestion would be pick a topic, balance your life, make sure you have fun, but make sure you also have a duty and complete your task to meet what the duty is going to be according to your mission. Everybody has to have a balanced life. It means fun, spirituality, productivity, but also you have to have some kind of a mission that completes your purpose. So thank you very much. I want to say again goodbye to everybody, and thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you, Marta, for providing this platform, because that's the other thing we need, platforms like this.
That's right. Bye. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. We'll try and do it
Uh,
often. Bye bye.
Okay.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Take care now.